My name is Wyatt, and you sons of bitches came into the wrong apartment. It's my belief that we can learn a tremendous amount about filmmaking craft and technique from analyzing bad movies. It always makes me curious when a project has undeniable potential but ends up making people feel George Lucas raped our childhood, George Lucas raped our childhood. Yeah, kind of like that. Indiana Jones is one of the most popular franchises of all time. It's the only franchise to combine the storytelling genius of George Lucas and the unbeatable visuals of Steven Spielberg. They hit 3 home runs together utilizing the world of Indiana Jones, and yet, the 4th installment, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, is widely regarded as...
They're raping him! I can't watch! Let's get out of here, Kyle!
Not very good. I believe the biggest factor as to why Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I'm going to refer to it for the rest of the video as just Kingdom, is considered bad is because it misuses its MacGuffin. I came to this conclusion by analyzing the story structure. I was able to draw every weird character decision and the story's ridiculous events all back to one moment, and that moment happens to involve the MacGuffin's mishandling. I'm going to pin down the exact time-coded moment where this movie jumped off the rails by going through the movie's entire plot structure. But real quick, we're going to have some fun with warning signs. And these little bits and pieces did not contribute to the movie's core story problems, but they did add to its overall tonal imbalance, and they're just a little bit of fun to talk about, so we're going to start there. Opening images in film are not often used to their fullest potential. To just open your film on clips of people talking or doing something else mundane is a big waste of a potential hook. When a film uses this opportunity, it properly pulls people in. It lets them know what type of story that we're jumping into. It teaches you how to interpret this particular movie's visual style, or at the very least, just sets up the tone. When it's used to its highest potential, it elevates the film every single time. The earliest warning sign that Kingdom was on a crash course is in its opening image. A CGI prairie dog jumping out of its hole. This particular franchise has a famous history with opening images. It's been used in the past to introduce or build suspense or mystery around a character, or bring us into its unique and adventurous setting, or transport us through time and setting. But the opening image in Kingdom just lets us know, hey, we're going to use a lot of CGI and it's going to be ridiculous. And after that initial warning sign, Kingdom continues to use CGI around every single corner. Another warning sign is that very early on, it's clear that there was much less care taken with the universe's logic this time around. Logic that the movie itself has set up, such as when the characters first enter Area 51 and know that whatever is supposed to be in this magical box is supposed to be magnetic. So magnetic, in fact, that Indiana Jones can use gunpowder to find it. The physics behind the magnetism don't make any sense. Yes, if you watch the entire movie, you find out that because magic, all metal is supposed to be pulled towards the skull. But that actually makes the logic worse. The gunpowder in the air moves way too slow for something that's magnetized, or not magnetized, but whatever. Wouldn't everything metal inside this warehouse be getting pulled towards it all the time? And you mean to tell me that wood is supposed to be stopping the lights and all the other metal material in this warehouse from being constantly pulled towards it? At one point, a soldier wearing glasses stands 2 feet away from the skull, and his glasses stay nice and snug on his face. I know that pulling apart the logic in an indie movie is a very fruitless endeavor. But in the previous films, the filmmakers did a phenomenal job of building up the heightened reality so that when ridiculous things happened, the audience didn't call bullshit. And on all of the above, all the audiences called bullshit. And I didn't even bring up swinging at 70 miles an hour to keep up with a bunch of monkeys. Why do these magical occurrences get a pass, but this movie doesn't? I think it's because when an audience is engaged in a narrative and is dying to know what happens next, they are willing to suspend their disbelief. When this happens, halfway to another dimension, and this, audiences don't suspend their disbelief or forgive Kingdom for all of its shortcomings because we see the skull. And at that point in the movie, we've already seen everything that it's just about capable of. I'm jumping too far ahead. We're going to start from the beginning. Plot. Structure. So the normal world, Indiana Jones is kidnapped and brought to Area 51 to help the Soviets uncover the skull. He's double-crossed by his longtime retcon friend, Mac. Irina Spacco arrives, and honestly is a pretty good villain. She's really well played by Cate Blanchett. I'm an Irina Spacco apologist. Sorry. We get a cool Raiders Easter egg. Sweet. And then Indiana Jones escapes a nuclear blast via refrigerator. Yes, the fridge thing is absolutely ridiculous and breaks the laws of physics, but I want to remind you again, that all this kind of tomfoolery is usually forgiven if the MacGuffin is handled properly. But I will add that the lack of radiation sickness doesn't make a lot of sense. It's around this time that the film starts to lock in its tone, a significantly different tone than the last three, and some would call that a warning sign, but I actually commend them for trying to do something different. I would say that Raiders and Temple have two very different tones, and I appreciate each one of them, so I'm glad they tried to do something different. Just too bad it didn't work. Indy comes home and is in the middle of teaching when he finds out that the FBI has ransacked his office, but he hasn't been fired. No, Indy quits. Then we come up on the inciting incident. Mutt Williams arrives. Just want to point out, I don't think that Mutt is a bad character, but to think that he ever could have taken over the Indiana Jones franchise, or that he even could have been half as memorable as the Indy character is absolutely ridiculous. He has zero investigative skills. Indy has to do everything, investigate everything. But again, I don't think he's a bad character to have in your movie. To think that he was going to lead the franchise is what's ridiculous about it. One of the original concepts actually was that this character was going to be this big college nerd who had to learn how to be a tough guy, which would have made a lot more sense for the future of the series, making the kid already archaeologically savvy. Anyway, Mutt is not a bad character. He's interestingly drawn, portrayed, but the importance the story puts on him is too heavy and not really fair. Then we get this fight. It's fun, it's campy. A lot of indie movies are like that. Get over it. And this chase scene through the academy is fun, thrilling, and overall probably the most Indiana Jonesy part of this movie. More of this. Please do more of this. But this potted plant thing does blow up way before anything touches it. Anyway, Indy and Mutt travel to Peru to continue investigating, and at this point, the only information that we really have is that Mutt's mom mailed a letter to Ox, played by John Hurt, who has always been obsessed with the notion of the Crystal Skull have been kidnapped. Stuff in Peru is all good and also pretty Indiana Jonesy. Some good investigating stuff between Indy and Mutt. Their investigation leads them to a cemetery, and again, all pretty on-brand stuff for the franchise. Although there is a lot more fuel for the logic gaps here. For example, do they poison tip both sides of the darts? That's unnecessarily dangerous. So they find the coveted Crystal Skull and they're instantly apprehended by the Russians. While in captivity, we get a good demonstration of what the skull does. Mutt tries to break them out, but alas, it's just an excuse to find out that Mutt is my son. The next day, they're on their way to Akator when, boom, the midpoint starts. Indy and company take over a car, steal the skull, and make their own way to Akator, and the skull continues to act weird as they trek across the Amazon. I will also point out that I do like the ant sequence. It's a good Indy versus the big guy fight. It's also annoying and slightly out of character that Indy continues to trust Mac, regardless if he ends up the good guy or not. He's crossed Indy like 3 times. Just cut him out of your life, man. It's one of those toxic relationships that people always talk about. They reach the kingdom of the Crystal Skull and we hit the big gloom. The Russians arrive, and dang nabbit, that Irina Spauchel gets to be the one to return the skull to the temple and claim all the riches for herself. But then this crazy alien stuff, like really crazy alien stuff, comes out of nowhere, and Indy's camp has to make a break for it. The climax happens. The skulls all turn into one big skull alien guy. Okay. The alien ship takes off while disintegrating Spalko. This part just left me with more questions than answers, really. Is the big reward that you get to die? I mean, she did everything she was supposed to do, and she just got to die for it. Also, character-wise, I think Mac is a little too greedy of a person to be this comfortable with dying.
I'm gonna be alright.
Just saying. And in this part right here, this spaceship taking off, what happened to all the natives that were just right down below? It's a pretty uplifting score, John Williams, to play while the indigenous people down below are being tornadoed to their death, but whatever. New normal. Indy and Marion get married, and Shia LaBeouf almost gets the keys to a major film franchise.
Whoa.
Whoa, so where did it go wrong? Right here at 5342, that's where the derailment begins. We see the Crystal Skull. Any mystery or suspense built up around it is more or less broken because we've seen what it can do, we've been told what it can do, and from now on until the end of the movie, the heroes have it in their possession, at least for like a little bit. They never lose it for more than a couple minutes. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indy gets the Ark around the same time code, that's at 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 41 seconds. Then he has to fight to get it back numerous times, but that's sort of part of the adventure. We're still mystified by the Ark because we don't know exactly what it does.
Now, what's that supposed to be coming out of there?
Lightning. Fire. Power of God or something.
That's really all we get, and we want to see more. We want to know more. However, the Crystal Skull somewhat followed the same rules as Raiders. We find the object about an hour into the movie. Well, it's about a 10-minute gap, and for the rest of the movie, you spent trying to get it back, sort of like table tennis. But somehow, the skull does not have the same captivating qualities as the Ark. Why? I believe this movie misuses its MacGuffin, and that's why it loses steam at the 53:42 mark. But what does that mean exactly? A MacGuffin is defined as an object, event, or character in a film or story that serves to set up and keep the plot in motion despite lacking intrinsic importance. To summarize, a MacGuffin does not necessarily have to be important. Mission Impossible 3 famously never even reveals what its MacGuffin or rabbit's foot even is, but it's an excuse to keep the plot moving forward. Historically, MacGuffins work best when the object is built up over the course of the movie, when you get to see what people are willing to do for it, or perhaps the characters might have it but not really know what it does. Or in some cases, we get an example of what it does early on, and that power is horrifying! I believe Kingdom misuses its MacGuffin because at 53:42, the mysticism is dead. Indy found the item. It's pretty clear that it's weird, but we're not really excited to see what else it can do. It's just kind of magnetic and maybe can make you crazy. In fact, the movie tells us that if the skull is returned to the city temple, that they'll be rich or have some kind of power. I would say that preventing a bad guy from getting rich is much less interesting of an investment of attention than a box that'll lay waste to entire regions and like melt people's faces off. Or a cup that will literally let you live forever. That's awesome. After the 53:42 mark, the movie's no longer about building up the skull or what it is. As far as the audience knows, it's about who gets rich first or who gets power first. And there are about 1 billion movies about that already. Before the 53:42 mark, they really tried to build up the mystery around the skull. Indy was kidnapped and loaded into a bus full of a dozen people he wasn't allowed to speak to, which sounds really creepy and mysterious. And then at the 53:42 mark, we see the skull and a good demonstration of its abilities, psychic whatsits. Now the only mysterious part of the story left is what is Akator, which is supposed to just be a city, and if you've seen the trailers, it's kind of an abandoned city. We already have a good idea of the riches and the treasure and the blah blah blah. In Raiders, finding the Ark didn't end the mystery behind it, it just enhanced it. I know that when they finally get to Akator, a bunch of crazy alien stuff happens, and that should be part of the mystery, but that's a total cheat. None of that was built or teased, and because it wasn't, as we journey into the temple, we aren't riveted by the possibilities of what could happen. And when the alien stuff finally does happen, it's a total blindside. All of that, stemming from the 53:42 mark, caused the screenwriter to have to write Indy a little bit out of character. Usually, Indy movies are traditional adventure stories where we follow our hero as he goes from one obstacle to the next.
We are going to die!
He's always smarter than the audience, but we're always right there with him in the moment-to-moment what's next situations. But Kingdom is treated more like a mystery, not necessarily an adventure. The best mystery films and the best mystery stories leave just enough clues for the audience members to be able to put the story together themselves. Usually it's a little too complicated for them to do it, but it's just enough in plain sight that when it finally does come together, you get that aha moment. But in this particular story, somebody else, Ox, has already figured everything out. So we are just retracing his steps, which takes the fun out of the adventure-y mystery stuff. And as a result, Indy doesn't seem like the smart guy to the audience anymore. He's just a tough old guy. Mysteries are a lot more fun for the audience when it's fair. When all the clues and information are presented in a way that if someone is paying close enough attention, they could potentially figure it out on their own. But this particular mystery doesn't give us, the audience, enough information to potentially solve it on our own. So either Indy or Oxley has to explain it to us. Or if they are given a clue, it's solved in about 3 seconds flat, which again takes the fun out of it. As a result, the audience starts to feel like they're being spoon-fed. And because at 53:42, the mystery was pulled out of it and the suspense was pulled out of it, the guy who's normally seen as the intelligent, tough guy just looks like a goofball carrying around a crystal skull because he's not really solving anything. He's just, again, retracing footsteps and surrounded by CGI monkeys. Now, remember what I said about suspending disbelief when you're invested in a mystery? Well, after 53:42, this happens. The sand pit, getting hit in the balls by flowers, the goddamn CGI monkeys. All of this seems a lot more ridiculous when you're not clinging on to story or characters, and the overuse of CGI doesn't help. Henceforth, this does not have anywhere near the dramatic weight as this. This moment could have been much more well-deserved. It's like I said at the top, I learned much more about MacGuffins while studying why Kingdom didn't work than I ever would have while studying why Raiders did work. Build up your MacGuffins, mystify them, don't give away the game until the very end, and have your characters make much more active choices while you do it. I'm willing to bet that if the alien stuff had been built up the same way the Ark had been, the audience would have definitely forgiven and maybe even enjoyed that alien reveal in the end. but because it hits you as a blindside and you're treated sort of like an idiot after 5342, it feels like a total letdown. But if you guys couldn't tell, I really love Indiana Jones as a franchise, and I saw this movie 4 times when it was in theaters. It pains me to say that through doing this analysis, I definitely like this movie a lot less now. I love the Indiana Jones franchise, but having a better understanding now of how poorly the MacGuffin was handled, probably going to stop going super easy on this movie and just result to it being bad. I have a lot of hope for Indiana Jones 5. I was inspired to make this video because that movie is going into production very soon, and I hope that it's very good. Thank you to everybody who watched my first video on Jumper and what happened there. You can watch that on the YouTube channel Screenplay. My name is Wyatt. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter or whatever on all these places. And thanks for tuning in.